Shalom to the Mishpachah. This is your Ak and Malach, Yochanan 7:38. That's John 7:38, coming to you with another observance in the name of Kahala Yahweh, Barak Hashem, Yahweh Shai. Today we're going to be observing the difference between the Allah of the Quran and the Allahayim of the Bible, and the difference and what this entails and how they compare to the Most High and the true and one true Amathmatah God of the Bible, or Yah of the Bible, who we know as Yahweh, and his son Yahweh Shai, and how the Allah of the Quran compares. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into this thing, shall we? Yeah, let's do it. Now, many who claim that Allah is the one true God and the highest power refer to this scripture for relevance, which is Hagar when she spoke to God. And I just want to observe the scripture. So let's begin by reading. This is Genesis 16, beginning at verse 13. And it reads, "And she called the name of Yahweh that spoke unto her, Thou God seest me. For she said, Have I also here looked after him that seeth me? Wherefore the well was called Bir Lahai. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Bered. And Hagar bare Abram a son, and Abram called his son's name, which Hagar bare Ishmael." Now we're going to see in the next scripture that all this was done by the Most High to show us not only who his seed was, where his promise lay, but also that this woman and her son were not chosen for the oath, covenant, and inheritance of the Most High. We see that he does not reveal his name to her, as she simply knows him as the God who sees me. No different than saying Allah, which basically is a generic term for the Elohim, which is the gods, the powers of the heavens. It doesn't identify specifically any Yah or any specific power in particular, and we're going to see that in just a moment. So let's go on to the next verse. Let's go ahead and observe the next scripture. Okay, this is Genesis chapter 22, starting at verse 14, and we're going to see a contrast in the revelation here. And it reads, "And Abraham called the name of that place Yahweh Yarah, as it is said to this day, in the mount of Yahweh it shall be seen." So we see that the Most High reveals his name in the fact that he has shown himself, that he sees, Abraham. We see in the name Bir Lahai that it indicates that there is a heavenly entity watching. But in the name Yahweh Yarah, we see that specific heavenly entity identified. And it reads, "And the angel of Yahweh called unto Abraham out of heaven the second time, and said, By myself have I sworn, saith Yahweh, for because thou hast done this thing, and hast not withheld thine son, thine only son," he says, meaning that he doesn't even acknowledge, the other son is a begotten son. "That in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore, and thy seed shall possess the gates of his enemies. So what is the difference? The difference is this: word, there was a promise, a word placed into Abraham and Sarah, that they would bear this holy son through their matrimony and covenant of marriage. Abraham had no such oath with Hagar. Therefore, the promise, and the Most High made no predestinated promise through Hagar. You know, she was the Ishmael was the product of the thoughts of Sarah. So we have to keep that in mind. And without further ado, let's continue our observance of this scripture. The common denominator in both instances, we see laha, lara'a, and when he appears to Hagar, and then we see Yahweh, Yara, Ha, in the instance when he appears to Abraham. And this Raraha portion is a Paleo-Hebrew and a holy Lashawan Kadashic word, which means to take notice, to perceive something. Okay, it's a verb meaning to see. And the rest of the definitions means to see someone, to see visions, to look, watch, appear, or be seen. It can also mean a seer, meaning someone who has prophetic visions, and so it gives us the connotation that, obviously when these visions were seen, obviously of the Most High, they were in fact visions of him. And, one thing to keep in mind is that Isaac is the mount where Isaac is to be crucified by Abraham was Mount Moriah, which is the same mountain in Jerusalem where Christ was crucified, right outside of Golgotha. Here we have an overview of the meaning of the word Allah in Arabic, which means generically just God. And as it says, it's a proper name for the one God worshipped in Islam and by Arabic speaking Christians. The word is a contraction of the Arabic definite article al, which means the, and ilah, which means deity or God. So it's a generic term, and we're going to see it has its origins in Hebrew, believe it or not. And that's how we know that it's not of the same power of Yahweh, to the same degree, basically, in essence, in Hebrew, it means to the powers that be, meaning the heavenly entities, but we need to identify a specific one. So let's begin. Another thing I like to point out is the fact that the word Allah in Hebrew means someone who takes an oath or a vow or a binding agreement, i.e. covenant, which only the children of Israel did do with the Most High. It doesn't include anyone of Islam. And if anyone wants to have any part in that covenant who is not of Islam, they must first acknowledge the salvation of the God of the Bible, or Yah of the Bible, Yahweh, and be willing to cleave and serve the ministry of his people, which are the Israelites, including his one begotten Son in the heavens, Yahushua. Here we see the meaning of the word al, or in New Age English is translated El, which means mighty one, one who holds authority over others, such as a judge, chief, or god. Like you see it in names like Michael or Gabriel, which means the speaker. Michael means someone who speaks of the authority of God, and Gabriel means a warrior or soldier of the powers of the living God. That is known throughout the Bible to be the force that we represent. And Christ often spoke of this force being his Father. This here would be the Haya part of Alahayim or Elohim, which means the heavenly powers or the forces that be, the heavenly forces that be. As we see, Haya is the word that the Most High used to introduce himself to Moses when he said, "I am that I am." So he says, and Hayam with an M at the end would make it plural. So when somebody says Alahayam, they're basically saying the authority or the heavenly powers that be. But we still haven't identified what, if they say this, they still aren't identifying specifically what God or Yah they're referring to. So let's keep observing. Let me also point out that this Haya is a newer version of the form Hawa, which would be spelled Hawah, or some might even say, in a newer sense, adding a U, Hauah. But many get it confused by dropping the A that should be before the U and saying Yahuwah instead of Yahweh. So when you leave the Hauah, it would still be pronounced Hawa, Yahweh. There was no U's used in as vowels in ancient Paleo Hebrew, so saying Yahuwah is improper. So let's continue with our observance. This is the verse where the Most High spoke to Moses as such, Exodus 3:14, and he says unto Moses, "I am that I am," meaning Hayam, Asad, Ahayam, or Hawam, Asad, Hawam. Either way, it basically is a portion of the word Alahayim or Alahawam or Elohim, which still doesn't tell us who we're talking to. Which brings us back to the sole intention of this observance, and that is Genesis 22:14, where Abraham calls the name of the place Yahweh Yara'ah, which basically means Yahweh has seen and borne witness. He's identifying the Most High power as Yahweh, which means Yah is, was, and is to become. And we see that identified here as just being the ever-existent one. And it is the proper name of the one true Alahayim, or power, the ultimate power of the universe and the world of worlds. Shalom and peace to the 12. I'm out.